My parents took me to court for buying a house. No joke. After 13 years of grinding and saving every penny, I finally bought my first home. And my reward? A court summons from my own parents claiming I owed them $350,000. I'm Alex, I'm 34 years old, and my own parents took me to court for buying a house. Before I tell you how a secret recording I made in my own living room blew up their entire scheme in front of a judge, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always incredible to see how far these stories can reach. Okay, so picture this. For 13 years of my life since I turned 21, every single decision I made was about one thing: saving money. I wasn't saving for a fancy car or exotic vacations. I was saving for a home, a place that was mine, a foundation. I worked every job you can imagine, delivering pizzas, washing dishes, overnight shifts, stocking shelves. You name it, I probably did it. I put myself through community college, then a coding boot camp, and finally landed a decent job in cybersecurity. For 8 years in that field, I lived with roommates, drove a beat-up Honda that had more miles on it than a space shuttle, and packed my own lunch every single day. Every spare dollar went into one account, the house fund. 2 months ago, it finally happened. I closed on my first home, a modest, 3-bedroom place in a quiet neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it had a small yard and a garage that I dreamed of turning into a workshop. The moment the realtor handed me the keys, I swear my hand was shaking. I walked through the empty rooms, the smell of new paint filling my lungs. It was the smell of victory, of independence. It was the proudest moment of my life. I had done it, all of it, on my own. That feeling lasted for exactly 48 hours. Then the certified letter arrived. I almost threw it on the counter with the junk mail, but the official look of the envelope stopped me. I tore it open, my brow furrowed in confusion. Inside, thick legal paper. My eyes scanned the jargon until they landed on the names. Plaintiff, my mother and my father. Defendant, me, Alex Miller. I felt the air leave my lungs. It had to be a mistake, a horrible, cruel joke. But as I kept reading, the words blurred together into a nightmare. They were suing me. They were suing me for the house, my house. And then I saw the number, the amount they claimed I owed them for the cost of raising me. $350,000. The keys in my pocket suddenly felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. I sank onto the floor of my brand new, empty living room, the legal papers scattered around me. The smell of paint was no longer the smell of victory. It was the smell of a trap closing in. I looked at the number again, that impossible, absurd figure. It wasn't just a number. It was a price tag they had put on my entire life's effort, a bill for their affection. And as I sat there, a single cold question echoed in the silent house. Why? To understand the why, you have to understand my family. And to understand my family, you have to understand my younger brother, Michael. Michael is what you'd call the golden boy. He's 2 years younger than me, but in our family, he was always light years ahead. He was the sun, and I was just a ghost orbiting him, occasionally useful for blocking a draft. Everything came easy to Michael, mostly because it was handed to him on a silver platter. I remember my 16th birthday like it was yesterday. My gift from my parents was a lecture about getting a job to pay for my own car insurance. I started delivering pizzas that weekend. For Michael's 16th birthday, there was a brand new Toyota parked in the driveway with a giant red bow on it. My parents beamed, their faces glowing with a pride they never seemed to have for me. A young man needs a reliable car, my father had announced to the gathered family members. I stood in the back, the smell of pizza grease still clinging to my clothes, feeling invisible. A few years later, I was starting at Northwood Community College. I paid for every credit myself, working 30 hours a week as a dishwasher at a diner. My schedule was brutal. Class from 8 a.m. to noon, work from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m., then homework until I passed out. I remember one night, sitting in the fluorescent hum of the 24-hour library, my eyes burning, trying to cram for a calculus exam. I pulled out my phone for a quick break and saw Michael's latest post on social media. It was a picture of him, smiling, raising a glass of wine in front of the Colosseum in Rome. The caption read, "Finding myself in Europe. Thanks Mom and Dad for the amazing study abroad opportunity. #blessed." My parents had paid for his entire 4-year private university education, including the semester in Europe and, later, a master's degree in art history. An art history degree he never used. When I had cautiously asked if they could help with even a small loan for a coding bootcamp that would guarantee me a real career, my mother had sighed dramatically. "Oh, Alex," she'd said, her voice dripping with pity. "We just don't have that kind of money to throw around. You know how expensive Michael's education is. You're so good at being independent. We're proud of you for that." It was a perfect cage. They'd praise my independence while actively ensuring I had no other choice. After the lawsuit papers arrived, I felt like I was drowning. For 2 days, I just walked around my new, empty house in a daze. I didn't unpack. I didn't sleep. I just existed. The person I needed to talk to wasn't a lawyer. Not yet. It was the only person who had ever seen me, really seen me, for who I was. David. David and I worked together at the cybersecurity firm. He was about 10 years older than me, a sharp, no-nonsense guy who'd been a corporate lawyer in a past life before burning out and switching to tech. He found the predictable logic of code more comforting than the fickle logic of people. We were work friends, eating lunch together most days, complaining about server patches and bad coffee. I called him on a Thursday morning, my voice hoarse. "Hey man, you got a minute? You sound like hell, Alex. What's up? I need some advice. The old lawyer kind of advice." We met for lunch at a cheap sub shop near the office. I slid the legal papers across the sticky table. David put on his reading glasses, his expression shifting from casual curiosity to disbelief, then to a quiet, simmering anger on my behalf. He read every word, his sandwich forgotten. "Let me get this straight," he said finally, pushing the papers back towards me. "They are claiming you owe them for child-rearing costs. And they want the court to force you to sign your house over to your brother? And continue paying the mortgage for 2 years. I just nodded, my throat too tight to speak. This is predatory. It's legally baseless. A judge will laugh this out of court," he said. Then he leaned forward. "But Alex, baseless doesn't mean harmless. This is going to be expensive. This is going to be ugly. This is a declaration of war." "I know," I whispered. "What do they want? Really? The house?" I said, my voice finally cracking. "My dad called me 2 days after I closed. He didn't congratulate me. He didn't ask for a tour. He just demanded it." The memory was seared into my brain. I was in the kitchen, planning where to put the fridge when my phone rang. It was my dad. "Alex," he'd said, his voice oddly formal. "No, hello? No, how are you? Hey, Dad, you won't believe this place. I need you to do the right thing," he interrupted. "Your brother needs that house." I froze. "What are you talking about?" "Michael is struggling, son. He has all that student debt, he can't afford a decent place. He needs stability. A man needs a foundation." The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. "A foundation? Dad, I just spent 13 years building my own. This is my foundation." "Don't be selfish," he snapped. "This is easy for you. You're good with money. You can just buy another one. This is for your brother. For the family. My name is on the deed, Dad. I saved the down payment. I pay the mortgage. It's my house." I'd never spoken to him like that before. My voice was steady, but my heart was hammering against my ribs. There was a cold silence on the other end of the line. Then, his voice dropped, turning venomous. "You will regret this, Alex. Family is supposed to come first." He hung up. 2 days later, the lawsuit landed on my doorstep. David listened to the whole story, his expression grim. "So they're trying to publicly shame you into giving up the one thing you've ever had for yourself, so they can give it to the son they've been bankrolling his entire life." "Pretty much," I said, pushing a stray piece of lettuce around my plate. "Okay," David said, his voice shifting into problem-solving mode. "First things first. You need a lawyer. A good one. A real shark. They cost money, David. A lot of it. All my money is in this house. I know. But you can't fight this alone. What if I did? The idea was crazy, and it tumbled out of my mouth before I could stop it. What if I represented myself? Who knows the story better than me? Who has all the proof? I have every bank statement, every pay stub, every email where I asked for help and they said no. It's all here. I tapped my temple. And here. I pointed to the worn-out briefcase I used for work. David stared at me for a long moment. I expected him to tell me I was an idiot, but instead he gave me a slow, considering nod. You're a cybersecurity analyst, Alex. You find vulnerabilities. You follow data trails. You document everything. Maybe you can do this. But you have to be 10 times smarter and 100 times more prepared than they are. He paused. And if you do this, I'll help. I'll be your unofficial, off-the-books paralegal. We'll nail them. For the first time in days, a tiny sliver of light cut through the fog. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I had an ally. The thought was so new, so foreign, that it almost brought me to tears right there in the sub-shop. I straightened up, took a deep breath, and looked at David. Okay, I said, my voice firm. Let's do it. The walk back to the office was different. The weight on my shoulders was still there, but it wasn't crushing me anymore. Felt manageable. But I knew this was just the beginning. David was right. My parents had declared war, and I had no idea just how dirty they were willing to fight. The days that followed were a blur of paperwork and sleepless nights. The official complaint arrived by courier, a thick stack of pages filled with accusations that felt like they were describing a stranger. It was all there in black and white. The $350,000 claim, calculated with a chilling absurdity. They had itemized my childhood. Braces, $5,000. Summer camp in 2002, $800. A prorated share of every mortgage payment, every electricity bill, every grocery run for 18 years. It was an invoice for my own existence. I sat at my new, empty dining table, spreading the documents out. It was clinical. It was brutal. I felt a wave of nausea. How could they do this? How could they strip mine our shared past for ammunition? My first instinct was to call my mother. To scream, to cry, to ask her how the woman who taught me how to ride a bike could now be trying to ruin my life. But I didn't. Instead, I called the one person in my family who had always felt like a safe harbor. My grandfather. My grandfather, my dad's dad, was a retired carpenter. A man of few words and strong, calloused hands. He smelled of sawdust and quiet strength. He picked up on the second ring. Gramps, I said, my voice tight. Alex, you sound tired, son. I took a shaky breath and told him everything. I read him the numbers, the accusations. I waited for him to express shock, or maybe to tell me I was misunderstanding something. But he was silent for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy, laced with a weariness that went beyond his years. I'm sorry, Alex. I am so sorry, he said. Your father, he's not thinking straight, and your mother is fanning the flames. I don't understand, Gramps. How can they be so cruel? Another pause. It's not just them, he said, and my blood ran cold. Your grandmother and I got a call yesterday. From your Aunt Carol. Aunt Carol, my dad's younger sister. She had always been complicated. Overly sweet to my face, always pinching my cheek a little too hard. But I'd often catch her watching me with a strange, cold look in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. What about her? I asked. She was the one who put this whole idea in their heads, my grandfather said, his voice laced with disgust. She's the one who found the lawyer. She's the one paying for it. The world tilted on its axis. What? Why would she do that? Jealousy, Alex. It's a poison. She's always felt your father got the better deal in life. She sees your success, your independence, and she resents it. She sees you and she sees him, and she's feeding your parents' worst instincts, telling them they're owed something, that they're victims. It was a betrayal on a whole new level. This wasn't just my parents and their obsession with Michael. This was a conspiracy. Coordinated attack. Just as that new reality was sinking in, things got worse. Michael, my golden boy brother, launched his own offensive. On social media, it started with a picture of him standing in front of my house, a smug grin on his face. The caption, "Checking out the new family digs. Big things coming. Hashtag family first, hashtag blessed." Then came the inspirational posts, photos of him looking wistfully into the distance, with captions like, "Sometimes the hardest working people have to rely on their family to give them the stability they deserve." He never mentioned me by name, but he didn't have to. The comments section filled up with a mix of confused friends and fawning relatives. "So proud of you, Mikey. You deserve it all." I felt a hot, public shame wash over me. He was parading his entitlement for the world to see, painting me as the villain in a story I never asked to be in. The phone calls started soon after. Uncles, cousins, family friends. Most of them were calling to lecture me. "Your parents are good people, Alex. Family is all you have. Michael needs your help." They had all heard my parents' carefully crafted, one-sided story. I was the selfish son, hoarding my success while my poor, deserving brother struggled. I spent an evening blocking numbers, my thumb jabbing at the screen with angry precision. I felt utterly alone, an island in a sea of hostility. Just as I was about to turn my phone off for the night, it rang again. An unknown number. I almost declined it, but something made me answer. "Hello," I said, my voice flat and tired. "Alex? It's Grandma." My heart skipped a beat. My grandparents had been silent through all of this. I had assumed the worst. "Grandma, your grandfather and we're on your side, honey," she said, her voice warm and clear. "We know how hard you've worked. We know what's right and what's wrong. This is wrong." I could hear my grandfather in the background. "Tell him we're proud of him," he said, his voice gruff but unmistakable. I leaned my head against the cool kitchen wall and closed my eyes. Tears I didn't know I was holding back started to stream down my face. It wasn't just about their support. It was validation. It was an anchor in the storm. Then my grandfather got on the line. "Listen to me, Alex," he said, his voice firm. "I've seen this kind of favoritism poison a family before. I saw what it did. I didn't speak up then. I won't make that mistake again. You fight this. You hear me? You fight." His words hit me with the force of a physical blow. I've seen this before. There was a history here, a deeper, darker current I'd never known about. It wasn't just about me and Michael anymore. It was about something older, something that needed to be broken. After I hung up, I walked into my home office. I looked at the piles of evidence I had been collecting, the bank statements showing my savings, the pay stubs from my teenage jobs, the emails where my parents had explicitly stated they couldn't help with my education. It was all there, a perfect, undeniable data trail of my life. I thought about hiring a lawyer, about handing my story over to a stranger and letting them fight for me. But my grandfather's words echoed in my head. "You fight." This wasn't just a legal case anymore. This was my life, my story, and I was the only one who could tell it. I called David. "I'm not hiring a lawyer," I said, my voice steady and clear. "Alex," he started, a note of caution in his voice. "I'm doing it myself, David. I have to. They've turned my life into a story. I'm going to be the one to write the ending." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear him weighing the risks, the sheer audacity of it. "Okay, Patton," he said finally, a hint of admiration in his voice. "Let's go win a war." The weeks leading up to the court date were the most intense of my life. My house became a war room. David came over most evenings after work. We'd order cheap pizza. The irony wasn't lost on me, and spread my life out on the dining room floor. My evidence was no longer just a pile of papers. It became a structured narrative. We organized everything into binders, with color-coded tabs: financial independence, parental support for Michael, declined requests for aid, the house purchase. David, with his old lawyer instincts, was ruthless. "This pay stub from the pizza place? It's good," he'd say, circling the date. It shows you were working at 17. But what's better? The bank statement from that same month showing a deposit for the exact amount, and another line item showing you paid for your own car insurance. We connect the dots. We make it undeniable. He taught me how to think like a lawyer. Be concise. Stick to the facts. Let the evidence speak for itself. Don't get emotional. That last part was the hardest. Every piece of paper held a memory, a sting of injustice. But I learned to push it down, to channel the anger into cold, hard preparation. About a week before the initial hearing, I got an email. It was from my parents' lawyer. Attached was a formal settlement offer. My heart hammered as I opened it. It was breathtaking in its arrogance. The offer was this. If I agreed to voluntarily sign the house over to Michael, my parents would generously agree to drop the lawsuit for the $350,000. It was framed as an act of mercy, a chance for me to make things right with the family before things got ugly in court. I forwarded it to David. His reply was instant. Delete it. Don't even respond. It's a scare tactic. They're trying to see if you'll blink. It's also a trap. Responding in any way, even to say no, can be twisted later. Ignore it. But the offer did something else. It gave me an idea. A risky, dangerous idea. They're trying to intimidate me, I said to David over the phone that night. They think I'm scared. What if I use that to my advantage? What are you thinking, Alex? He asked, his voice cautious. They want to talk? Let's talk, I said. I'll call them. I'll tell them I want to discuss the offer. I'll ask for one last meeting, just me and them at my house, to talk things through before the lawyers get even more involved. Alex, that's a minefield. They'll just use it to manipulate you. I know, I said, my voice low. That's exactly what I'm counting on. It was the scariest phone call I've ever had to make. I dialed my mother's number, my hand shaking so slightly I had to steady it on the table. She answered, her voice cold and distant. What do you want, Alex? I took a deep breath. I got the offer from your lawyer, I said, keeping my voice as neutral as possible. I think we should talk. Just us. Here. At the house. Before this goes any further. I could hear her whisper to my father in the background. Then she came back on the line, a note of triumph in her voice. Fine. We'll be there tomorrow at 7. The next evening I prepared the scene. I set out a plate of cookies on the coffee table, a pathetic attempt at normalcy. I made sure my phone was fully charged, and I downloaded a simple voice recording app, one that could run in the background with the screen off. In my state, it was legal to record a conversation as long as one party consented. I was that party. This wasn't entrapment. It was insurance. They arrived exactly on time. They walked into my house, without wiping their feet. They didn't look at the new floors or the freshly painted walls. They looked at me, their faces a mixture of pity and resolve, like surgeons about to perform a painful but necessary amputation. Alex, my father started, sitting on the edge of my new sofa without being invited. We're glad you came to your senses. This has been hard on all of us. I haven't come to any senses, I said calmly. I wanted to understand. I wanted to hear it from you. Why are you doing this? My mother sighed, the sound of a martyr. We're doing this for you, don't you see? We're trying to teach you about family. Michael is your brother. He needs this. You've always been fine on your own. So because I've managed on my own, I'm the one who has to give everything up? It's not everything, my father boomed, his face turning red. It's a house. You can get another one. This is about what's right. I leaned forward, my heart pounding in my ears. I kept my voice low, almost a whisper. So, the lawsuit, the $350,000, that's all real? You really think I owe you that? My mother scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. And then, she said the words I had been waiting for. The words that would change everything. Oh, for heaven's sake, Alex, don't be so dramatic. Of course we know a judge won't actually give us the house or make you pay that ridiculous amount. Our lawyer told us that. I held my breath. My thumb was resting on the side of my phone in my pocket. Then why? I asked, my voice barely audible. Why do it? She looked me dead in the eye, her expression cold and hard. Because this is the only way, she said, her voice dropping with venomous clarity. It's a ploy. It's to put pressure on you. To make you do the right thing and give the house to your brother without a big, ugly fight. It's to make you understand your place. My father nodded in agreement. A public embarrassment is a small price to pay for family loyalty. Click. I had it. I felt a strange calm wash over me. The anger, the hurt. It was all still there, but it was now encased in ice. I had what I needed. I stood up. Thank you for coming, I said, my voice devoid of all emotion. I think this conversation is over. They looked at me, confused by my sudden dismissal. They thought they had won. They thought their pressure campaign was working. As they walked out the door, my mother patted my arm. You're doing the right thing, honey, she whispered. I didn't say a word. I just closed the door behind them, locked it, and leaned against it, my body finally starting to tremble. I pulled out my phone and looked at the small digital file. It was just a few kilobytes of data, but it was the most powerful weapon I had ever possessed. The day of the hearing arrived on a cold, gray morning. I walked into the county courthouse, my worn briefcase feeling heavier than ever. It didn't just contain papers. It contained my life for the past 16 years. I saw them across the lobby, my parents and Michael. I almost didn't recognize them. They were dressed in somber, expensive-looking clothes that were clearly meant to project an image of respectable, grieving parents forced into a terrible position. My father wore a stiff blazer, my mother a dark dress with a single string of pearls. Michael had on a suit that looked a size too big for him. It was a costume, and a bad one at that. They huddled together with a man in a slick, tailored suit, their lawyer. They glanced at me, then quickly looked away, a practiced performance of sorrow. David had insisted on coming. He wasn't allowed to sit with me at the defendant's table, but he gave my shoulder a firm squeeze before taking a seat in the public gallery. Just the facts, Alex, he whispered. Stick to the script. You got this. We were all called into the courtroom. It was smaller than I imagined, all polished wood and stern efficiency. A woman with a kind face who I guessed was the court clerk told us the judge would be out shortly. Her name was Judge Evans. I sat at my table alone and arranged my binders. My hands were sweating, but my mind was surprisingly clear. The fear was still there, but the anger was a cold, hard stone in my gut, giving me strength. Judge Evans entered. She was a woman in her late 50s with sharp, intelligent eyes and an expression that said she had seen it all and wasn't impressed by much. The hearing began. My parents' lawyer went first. He painted a masterpiece of manipulation. He spoke of my parents' undying love, their sacrifices. He showed pictures of my childhood, me on a tricycle, me at a birthday party. These are the parents who gave this young man everything, he said, his voice thick with emotion. And now, in their time of need, with one son struggling under the weight of student debt, the other, a successful professional, refuses to help. He refuses to acknowledge the debt he owes them. Not just the financial debt, Your Honor, but the moral debt. He presented their invoice, the itemized list of my childhood costs. Judge Evans looked at it, her expression unreadable. He then called Michael to the stand as a character witness. Michael spoke in a soft, rehearsed voice about his struggles as a freelance artist and digital content creator, how the instability was affecting his mental health, and how all he wanted was a stable home to create from. It was a good performance. I could feel the eyes of the few people in the gallery on me, full of judgment. Then it was my turn. Mr. Miller, Judge Evans said, her gaze fixing on me. You are representing yourself? Yes, Your Honor, I said, my voice clearer than I expected. The floor is yours. I stood up and walked to the lectern. I didn't look at my parents. I looked directly at the judge. Your Honor, I began. The plaintiff's counsel has told a very moving story. The only problem is, it isn't true. For the next 20 minutes, I dismantled their narrative piece by piece. I didn't use emotion. I used data. Counsel stated that my parents gave me everything. Exhibit A is my bank statement from June 2008, showing my first deposit from my first job at Pizza Palace. Exhibit B is the bill of sale for a 1996 Honda Civic, which I purchased myself for $800. Exhibit C is a record of every tuition payment I made to Northwood Community College. I went on, my voice gaining confidence with every fact. I presented the emails where I had asked for a small loan for my coding bootcamp and was denied due to the expense of Michael's master's degree. I presented the documents for my home loan, showing a 20% down payment saved entirely by me, from my own salary. Judge Evans listened intently, occasionally making notes. The courtroom was silent. My parents' lawyer was starting to look uncomfortable. Finally, I was done with my presentation of evidence. Your Honor, I said, I have no further evidence to present at this time, but I would like to call my mother to the stand for questioning. A murmur went through the room. My mother looked at her lawyer in a panic. He whispered something to her, and she reluctantly made her way to the witness box. I approached her. My heart was pounding, but I kept my voice steady. Mom, I said, and the word felt like ash in my mouth. You stated in your complaint that you are suing me to recoup the costs of raising me. Is that correct? Yes, she said, clutching the pearls at her neck. We just want what's fair. And you believe that I owe you this house? We believe Michael deserves it. We believe you should do the right thing for your family. She was starting to sound like a broken record. I took a deep breath. This was it. The moment of truth. Mom, isn't it true that this entire lawsuit, the $350,000 claim, the demand for the house, isn't actually about getting those things? Her lawyer jumped up. Objection. Leading the witness. Sustained, said the judge. Rephrase, Mr. Miller. I nodded. Let me ask you this then. On the evening of October 12th at my home, did you have a conversation with me about this lawsuit? She shifted in her seat. Yes, we came to try and talk some sense into you. And in that conversation, I said, my voice dropping, did you say to me, and I'm choosing my words very carefully here, that you knew a judge would not actually give you the house or the money? Panic flashed in her eyes. Pure, unadulterated panic. I don't recall saying that. You don't recall? I pressed. You don't recall admitting that the lawsuit was, and I quote, a ploy to put pressure on me? No, I never said that. That's a lie, she cried, looking desperately at the judge. I paused, letting her denial hang in the dead silent room. I looked at her, then at my father, whose face had gone pale. I looked at Michael, who was staring at his hands. Then I turned to the judge. Your Honor, I said, my voice ringing with clarity. I have a recording of that conversation. You could have heard a pin drop. The air was sucked out of the room. My mother's face crumpled. Her lawyer shot up from his chair, sputtering, Objection, objection, Your Honor. Improperly obtained. But Judge Evans wasn't looking at him. Her eyes, as sharp as shards of glass, were locked on my mother. She held up a hand, silencing the lawyer. Mrs. Miller, the judge said, her voice dangerously quiet. I am going to ask you one more time, and I advise you to remember that you are under oath. Did you, or did you not, tell your son that this lawsuit was a ploy? My mother stared at the judge, her bravado gone, replaced by raw fear. The pearls, the expensive dress, the grieving mother act. It all melted away, leaving a small, cornered woman. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She looked at my father for help, but he wouldn't meet her eyes. Finally, she broke. A sob escaped her lips, and she whispered, Yes. That single word sealed their fate. Judge Evans leaned back in her chair, a look of profound disgust on her face. She looked at my parents, then at their lawyer. This is one of the most egregious abuses of the judicial process I have ever witnessed, she said, her voice like steel. You have filed a frivolous, malicious lawsuit. You have lied under oath. You have attempted to use this court as a tool for familial extortion. She turned her gaze to me. Mr. Miller, You have conducted yourself with more integrity and professionalism than the actual attorney in this room." Then she brought down her gavel, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent room. "Case dismissed with prejudice," she boomed. "And I am referring this matter to the State Bar for a review of counsel's conduct. We are done here. It was over. I had won." I stood there, my hands gripping the lectern to keep them from shaking. I looked over at my family. Their faces were a canvas of pure, unfiltered humiliation. They had gambled everything on my submission, and they had lost in the most public way imaginable. In that moment, they weren't my parents or my brother. They were just strangers on the other side of a war I never wanted to fight, but was forced to win. Leaving the courthouse felt like walking out of a pressure cooker. The air outside was cold and sharp, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. David was waiting for me on the steps, a huge grin on his face. He didn't say anything. He just pulled me into a rough, back-pounding hug. "You did it, you absolute madman," he said, laughing. "You actually did it." The victory was sweet, but I knew it wasn't the end. People like my parents, my aunt, and my brother don't just accept defeat. They double down. I was right. The fallout was swift and pathetic. 2 days after the hearing, Aunt Carol began her campaign. It was a series of unhinged, rambling voicemails. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" One of them slurred, clearly fueled by cheap wine. "You humiliated your own mother. You tore this family apart. You'll get what's coming to you, Alex. You'll end up alone. You'll see." Michael's approach was more public. He launched a GoFundMe page. The title was "Help Me Rebuild After Family Betrayal." The photo was a black-and-white selfie of him looking sad. The story was a work of fiction that would have made Shakespeare blush. He claimed his financially powerful older brother had used legal loopholes to steal his inheritance and destroy his future, leaving him on the brink of homelessness. He was asking for $50,000. I felt a surge of white-hot anger, but David's voice of reason cut through it. "Document it," he said calmly when I called him, fuming. "Screenshot everything. Save the voicemails. This isn't just pathetic, Alex. It's harassment. It's libel." We did just that. We compiled a new binder. The aftermath. It was depressingly thick. Aunt Carol escalated from voicemails to driving past my house at all hours of the night, sometimes just sitting in her car across the street, staring. It was creepy. It was designed to intimidate me, to make me feel unsafe in my own home. Armed with the new evidence, the screenshots of the fraudulent GoFundMe page, the saved voicemails from my aunt, a log of her drive-bys captured by the new security camera I'd installed, I went back to the courthouse. This time, I wasn't a defendant. I was a petitioner. Getting the restraining order against my aunt was surprisingly simple. The evidence was overwhelming. The judge, a different one this time, granted it without hesitation. Carol was legally barred from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of my home or workplace. The GoFundMe was taken down after I filed a fraud report, complete with a link to the court records dismissing my family's case. It had only raised $75, mostly from a few distant relatives who didn't know the real story. The final piece was the phone call. It came about a week after the restraining order was served. It was my father. His voice was different this time. The booming authority was gone, replaced by a strained, wheezing sound. "Alex," he said, "your aunt is beside herself. You got a restraining order against your own family." I stood in my kitchen, looking out at the small yard that I was finally starting to enjoy. I felt nothing. The anger was gone. The hurt was a dull, distant ache. All that was left was a strange, sad clarity. "She was harassing me, Dad," I said, my voice calm. "There are consequences for that. This has to stop," he pleaded. "This is tearing everyone apart. Your mother hasn't stopped crying. Michael won't leave his room. This isn't about me anymore," I said, and the words felt true and solid. "This is about you. All of you. You built this. You have to live with it." "What do you want from us, Alex?" he asked, his voice cracking. "What will it take to fix this?" I thought about it for a long moment. What did I want? An apology? Money? Revenge? I realized with a jolt that I didn't want any of it. What I wanted was something they could never give me. The past back. A different childhood. A family that wasn't broken. Since that was impossible, there was only one other thing I needed. Peace. I don't want anything from you, I said, my voice quiet but firm. I just want you to leave me alone. Don't call me. Don't come here. Let me live my life. The one I built. The one you tried to take away. But we're your family, he whispered. A last, desperate grasp at the old power dynamic. I took a deep breath. It was time to set the final boundary. Time to cut the cord for good. You were my family, I corrected him gently. But you stopped acting like it a long time ago. I'm not the one who broke this family, Dad. I'm just the one who stopped pretending it wasn't broken. I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Then silence. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't need one. I ended the call and blocked his number. Then I blocked my mother's. Then Michael's. It was a strange, liberating feeling. With each tap of the screen, I was building a wall. Not a wall to keep the world out, but a wall to keep the toxicity from getting back in. For the first time since that certified letter arrived, my house felt truly my own. Felt safe. Felt like home. The next 6 months were like waking up from a long, feverish dream. The silence from my family was deafening at first. Then gradually, it became peaceful. It was the sound of my own life, uninterrupted. The first thing I did was fill the house with life. I went to the local animal shelter and came home with a goofy, one-eared mutt named Buster. He had been found wandering the highway, and he had the most grateful eyes I'd ever seen. His presence transformed the empty rooms. His clicking claws on the hardwood floor became the new soundtrack of my home. Then I filled it with people. My people. David and his wife, Sarah, started coming over for game nights. We'd order takeout, argue over board games, and laugh until our sides hurt. My small circle of work friends became my real friends. My house, once a symbol of a battle I had to fight, became a sanctuary, a place of warmth and laughter. But the most significant change, the most profound healing, came from an unexpected place. My grandfather. He started visiting every Saturday. He'd bring a bag of groceries. A growing boy needs to eat, he'd joke, even though I was 34, and we'd spend the afternoon in my garage. I had finally started building the workshop I'd always dreamed of. He was teaching me woodworking. He was a patient teacher. He taught me how to read the grain of a piece of oak, how to feel the balance of a hand plane, how to have the patience to sand a piece until it was as smooth as glass. We didn't talk much about what had happened with my parents. We didn't have to. The quiet work, the shared creation, was its own form of therapy. We were building things, not breaking them. One Saturday, we were working on a small bookshelf. The late afternoon sun slanted through the garage window, illuminating the floating sawdust like golden dust. You know, my grandfather said, running his hand over a piece of cherry wood we had just finished sanding. You remind me of him. Of who, Gramps? I asked, wiping sawdust from my hands. My brother Daniel, he said quietly. He rarely spoke of his family. My younger brother. He set down the wood and looked at me, his eyes holding a story I had never heard. When we were boys, my mother, your great-grandmother, she was a lot like your father. She had a favorite, and it wasn't Daniel. It was me. I stopped what I was doing and listened, my heart suddenly still. I was the golden boy, I guess, he said with a sad smile. Everything I did was perfect. Everything Daniel did was wrong. I got the praise. He got the chores. When our father died, she made sure I got the lion's share of the farm. I told myself it was right. I told myself I had earned it. Daniel, he never said a word against it. He just packed a bag one day and left. Moved out west. We barely spoke after that. He built a new life for himself, a good one. But he never came back. He picked up a piece of sandpaper and looked at it, his gaze distant. I was young. I was arrogant. And I was silent. I stood by and watched my mother push my brother away because it benefited me. And I have regretted that silence every single day for the past 50 years. He finally looked up at me, his eyes shining with unshed tears. When your father started doing the same thing with you and Michael, I saw my mother in him, and I saw my brother in you, and I saw myself in my own past, the boy who was too weak and too selfish to speak up. He reached out and put a heavy, comforting hand on my shoulder. I couldn't fix what I broke back then, but I swore to God I wouldn't stay silent again. I wouldn't watch history repeat itself. Supporting you, Alex, it was the most important thing I've done in a long, long time. You didn't just win a house. You broke a cycle, a curse that has been running in this family for generations. You have no idea how proud I am of you. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, the scent of cherry wood and old regrets filling the air, and I understood everything. His unwavering support, his fierce pride, his quiet presence. It was all an act of atonement. It was his way of saving the boy he couldn't save 50 years ago. It was the greatest gift he could have ever given me. The healing wasn't linear. It wasn't perfect. One evening, a few weeks after that conversation, my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. It was my mother. Her voice was thick with tears, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of self-pity. Alex, she wept. Everything is ruined. It's all broken. I waited, saying nothing. Your father, he won't even look at Michael the same way anymore, she sobbed. Ever since that day in court, he looks at him with disappointment. You've poisoned him against his own son. You broke everything. The old Alex would have felt a pang of guilt. The old Alex would have tried to fix it, to smooth things over, to take the blame. But the old Alex was gone. He had been sanded down, planed smooth, and finished with a new, tougher varnish. I took a breath, the air in my lungs clean and steady. No, Mom, I said, my voice quiet, but as solid as the oak workbench my grandfather and I had built. You broke it. It was broken a long time ago. I paused, letting the words sink in. I just turned on the lights. I ended the call before she could reply. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I just felt free. The last shackle had just rusted away and fallen at my feet. The cycle was well and truly broken. It's been over a year now since that day in court. My life is quiet, and I've learned that quiet is a beautiful thing. It's not the empty, lonely quiet from before. It's a peaceful, fulfilling quiet, filled with the happy snores of a one-eared dog and the lingering smell of sawdust. My workshop is my sanctuary. It's where I go to think, to create, to turn rough, jagged pieces of wood into something smooth, useful, and beautiful. My grandfather comes over every weekend. We don't talk about the past much anymore. We talk about dovetail joints, the price of lumber, and whether Buster needs another bath. Last week, we finished a project we'd been working on for months. A solid, handcrafted dining table, big enough to seat 8 people. We stood back, admiring our work. The grain of the wood flowed like a river under the finish. It was strong. It was sturdy. It was built to last. As I ran my hand over the smooth surface, I realized something. Building a life is a lot like woodworking. You start with the raw material you're given. Some parts are strong, some are weak, some are knotted and twisted with old wounds. You can't change the nature of the wood, but you can choose what to do with it. You have to be brave enough to cut away the rotten parts, the pieces that are weak and toxic. It's a painful process. It leaves gaps and holes, but it's the only way to get to the strong, healthy grain underneath. Then, with patience and hard work, you sand down the rough edges. You join the good pieces together. You build something new, something that is yours, something that can support you. My family, the one I was born into, tried to tell me I was a lesser piece of wood, only good for propping up the more valuable parts. They tried to take what I had built and give it to someone else. But they were wrong. My real family is the one I chose. It's a 75-year-old man who taught me the value of silence and the courage to speak up. It's a cynical ex-lawyer who showed me the meaning of loyalty. It's a one-eared dog who reminds me every day that a broken past doesn't prevent a happy future. It's the friends who gather around this table, filling my home with laughter. They are my foundation. Not the house, not the wood, not the money. Them. this, the life I built not from scratch, but from the salvaged, strong pieces of a broken past. And it's more beautiful than anything I could have ever imagined. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever had to fight for something everyone told you to give up? I'd love to hear about it. Please share your story in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next.